Hey there, we are the Study Buddies. In today's Mathematics Edition video, we'll be studying about quadratic equation and expression. So first of all, what is quadratic equation? Quadratic equations are basically equations which have the second degree, which means their unknowns, which is usually used as the term x, has a power of 2, and that is the maximum power a quadratic equation can have. It cannot have x to the power of 3, power 4, and so on and so forth. So therefore, what is the general formula for quadratic equation? So the general formula for quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c equals to 0. And what is very important in this general formula is that a should not be equal to 0. Why a should not be equal to 0 is because if a is equals to 0, it becomes 0 times x squared, which is not going to give a power of 2 in the equation. Thus it would not become a quadratic equation anymore. So what are we going to learn today? So today we are going to learn how to solve quadratic equations through 3 methods. So these are the methods to solve quadratic equations, and they are completing the square, complete factorization, and quadratic formula. So we will be going through one by one, and I hope by the end of this video you can understand all the 3 ways to solve the question. So now first I'll be teaching you how to do the complete factorization method. So let's say we have this question: 3x squared minus 6x minus 9 is going to be equal to 0. So how do we solve this question by complete factorization is that first we have to simplify this equation. So you can see that it's 3, 6 and 9, and 3, 6 and 9 are basically multiples of 3. So we can divide this whole equation with 3, and thus we can get a much simpler form, which is x squared minus 2x minus 3 equals to 0. So now let's move into how we are going to use this method. So now the method I'm going to write is not necessary to be included in your workings. So just put x like this, do a cross, and here you have to write the multiple which brings this number. So this side is the multiple which brings ax squared. So since the case here a is equals to 1, so you can just ignore a, and x squared is actually x times x. Okay, so for this side now we have to find a number. We have to find the multiple which can bring us to negative 3. So what can bring to negative 3? 1 times negative 3 or 3 times negative 1. Okay, so we have to do trial and error now. So how do we do trial and error is that first let's say I'm going to insert 3 times negative 1. Okay, so now once we cross multiply both of these together, we are going to get 3x and negative x. So 3x minus with x, you're going to get 2x. So this is actually the bx of the general formula. I'll just write down the general formula again. So is 2x matching to negative 2x or not? So obviously no, right? So therefore we cannot use 3 times negative 1. This becomes a wrong working. So rather than that, let's try negative 3 times with 1, which is going to give us a new answer of negative 3x and positive x. So negative 3x plus x is going to give us a negative 2x, which now matches. Okay, so therefore now we get to know that this and this would be our factorization. So how do we write this down here now is that just put a bracket x minus 3, which denotes this part, and then we put another bracket x plus 1, which denotes this part, equals to 0. So this is how we do complete factorization. So this is one of the methods which I would recommend to use. So now since we have got this answer, what we can do is that we can just split into 2, which is now it becomes x minus 3 equal to 0, x plus 1 equals to 0. So this becomes an n. So sorry, this becomes an OR. Okay, So x minus 3 equals to 0, therefore x, you bring the negative 3 to the right hand side, it becomes positive 3. And x plus 1 equals to 0, you bring the positive 1 to the right hand side, it becomes negative 1. And therefore the answer for this question is x is equals to 3 or x is equal to negative 1. So this is how you solve this question. So another shortcut method which you can use to solve factorization questions is by using the calculator. So what you do is that you just press mode 1, 2, 3, and you press mode 3 times, you'll see this symbol, press EQN, go to degree, press number 2. Press number 2 since it's a quadratic equation. So after you press number 2, you just input the numbers A, B and C. So for this case, A is equal to 1, B is equal to negative 2 and C is equal to negative 3. And by this we actually get the answer, x equals to 3 and x equals to negative 1. But then however, during your exams, definitely you can't show your calculator in front of your lecturer in your exam paper, right? So therefore, this is why you need this method. But this is an alternative method where you can easily find out the answer or just to double check your answer. So now let us move on to our second example. Let's say we have 2x squared plus 2x minus 15 equals to x squared minus 2x minus 18. So how do we solve this with complete factorization method is that first we have to make this whole thing into the general way. So let's say I'm going to bring everything on the right hand side to the left hand side. So now it's 2x squared minus x squared plus 2x plus 2x minus 15 plus 18 equals to 0. So I'm going to solve everything individually according to the unknowns, like x squared and x squared. 2x squared minus x squared, I'm going to get x squared. 2x plus 2x is going to bring 4x. Negative 15 plus 18 is going to bring 3, and the answer is equal to 0. So now we have achieved the general formula. So now what we have to do is that again, this method is not necessary to be shown in your solutions, but it's easy to guide you to answer your questions. X squared is x times x. 3 can be 1 times 3 only. There's no other ways to find 3. So 1 and 3. So 1 times 3 is positive. So therefore you put the positive symbol inside, and thus you're going to get x and 3x, bringing an answer 4x, which matches. So therefore when you factorize, you are going to get an answer of x plus 1, x plus 3 equals to 0, and therefore x plus 1 equals to 0, x plus 3 equals to 0, x is going to be negative 1 and negative 3. So therefore the answer for this equation is x equals to negative 1 or x equals to negative 3. So this is how you can solve this kind of questions. So now you are going to look at our second method, which is completing the square. So before I move into an exact example, I'll just show you how basically completing the square works. So first of all, when you see an equation, a quadratic equation, for this case I'll just use the general formula, ax squared plus bx plus c. So if the question is asking you to complete the square to find out the answer, the first method you have to remember is to remove the a from the whole equation. So you're just going to remove a, put a big bracket, x squared plus b over ax plus c over a, which is going to equal to 0. So you may wonder why it became b over a. So let's say if I times back a inside, b over a times a, which is going to be something like this, is still going to give the answer b. So therefore b over ax plus c over a equals to 0. Then after you have done this step comes the very important step of completing the square, which is you have to take this part which is connected to x, times it with 1 over 2 and square this whole thing. So this is a very important part which you have to remember whenever you complete the square for an equation. Okay, so for this case 1 over 2 times b over a, you're going to get b over 2a after you square it, it's b square over 4a square. Okay, so now what you have to do with this number is that you have to, so again, a big bracket, put another small bracket, bring the x square plus b over ax, and now you have to plus with this value, so plus b square over 4a square, close this bracket, and now you have to minus the same value again, b square over 4a square plus c over a equals to 0. So this is how quadratic equation, completing the square works. After you find out this value, you bring it here, and then you simplify this thing, or you factorize this thing. So after you factorize this thing, you're going to get an answer of a bracket x plus with b over 2a square minus b square over 4a square plus c over a equal to 0. And then the question continues. So I'll be explaining another example, and I think by looking at that you can understand this much clearer. So look at this question now. X square minus 8x plus 5. So before I go into question, I think it would be better to identify the a, b and c respectively. So a for this case is 1, b is -8, and c is equals to 5. So how do we solve this question? First, as I said before, when you complete the square, you have to remove the a. But then for this case, since it's number 1, generally it's going to bring you to the same place, which is x square minus 8x plus 5. So after you've removed the 1, I've told you, you have to take this part, times it with 1 over 2 and square it. So 1 over 2 times -8, you're going to get -4 square, which is going to bring you to an answer 16. Okay, so what we have to do now, put a big bracket, x square minus 8x plus 16 minus 16 plus 5, you're going to get 0. Okay, so now let's factorize this part. So x square minus 8x plus 16, it's going to be something like 4 negative. So it's going to be x minus 4 square minus -16 plus 5 is going to be -11 equals to 0. And from now onwards, you can start finding the value of x already, which is, so you can remove this bracket, x minus 4 square is equals to 11, because -11, you bring it to the right hand side, it's going to be positive. So x minus 4 square equals to 11. X minus 4 is equals to square root 11 plus minus. So whenever you bring a square to the other side of the equation, it's going to bring you to bring a square root, and the square root can be positive or negative. So therefore you have to write both. And from this continues, x minus 4 equals to square root 11 positive, or x minus 4 equals to negative square root 11. Okay, so let's just ignore the upper part. So x minus 4 is equals to square root 11, or x minus 4 is equal to negative square root 11, which is going to bring to an answer x equals to square root 11 plus 4, or x equals to 4 minus square root 11. So therefore that's the answer for this question, this or this. So that's how you solve completing the square. So now let's look at our second example, -2x square minus 12x minus 9. So in this case, a is equals to -2, b is equal to -12, and c is equal to -9. So as I said, completing the square, first step, remove the a, which is going to be -2 bracket x square. So after you remove -2, this is going to become a positive 6x plus 9 over 2 equal to 0. So now let's take this 6 and do the normal thing which we have to do for this chapter, 1 over 2 times 6 square, which is going to give you 3 square. therefore it's going to be 9. Okay, so now let's resume. Negative 2 x square plus 6x plus 9 minus 9 plus 9 over 2 equal to 0. So let's factorize this part and we'll get x plus 3 square minus, with negative 9 plus 9 over 2, you're going to get negative 9 over 2 equals to 0. Okay, so after that you can just bring this negative 2 inside and times respectively to both parts of the equation. So it's going to give negative 2 x plus 3 square plus 9 equals to 0. Okay, so now let's bring this 9 to this side, to the right hand side. So negative 2 x plus 3 square equals to negative 9, and therefore x plus 3 square is going to be negative 9 over negative 2, which is 9 over 2. So x plus 3 square is equal to 9 over 2. Bring the square there, it's going to be x plus 3 equals to plus minus 3 over square root 2. So you may wonder why it's 3 over square root 2, because let's say if I square root this whole thing, it's going to be square root 9 over 2 square root 2. So square root 9 can become 3, but square root 2, since it's an irrational number, it's going to remain as square root 2. So therefore plus minus 3 over square root 2. Okay, so therefore the answer is x plus 3 equals to positive 3 over square root 2, or x plus 3 equals to negative 3 over square root 2, which is going to lead to an answer of x equals to negative 3 plus 3 over square root 2, or x equals to negative 3 minus 3 over square root 2. So this is how you have to solve questions which really ask you to complete the square. So let's say if the question is not telling you completing the square, I personally would not recommend you to use this method, because you have a much simpler method, which is the complete factorization method. But unless once you do in your calculator you get a random answer like 0. Blah 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 blah, you see, like, you notice that it is an irrational number. So you can solve either using this method or the method which I'm going to explain next, which is quadratic formula. So what is quadratic formula? It's very simple. Let's say we have an equation of ax squared plus bx plus c. We just substitute the values of a, b and c into this quadratic formula. So let's look at an example. Let's say we have x squared plus 12x plus 4. So from this we know that a is equal to 1, b is equal to 12 and c is equal to 4. So we just substitute inside this equation, where we are going to get negative 12 plus minus 12 square minus 4 times 1 times 4 over 2 times 1. So by solving this, we are going to get 144 minus 16 over 2. So 144 minus with 16, we are going to get an answer of 128 over 2. So now let's try to simplify cert 128, and the answer is going to be negative 12 plus minus cert 64 times with cert 2. How I can split it into this? It's actually 64 times 2 equals 128. Okay, so divided by 2. So cert 64, you're going to get an answer of 8, because 8 times 8 is 64. So therefore it's 8 cert 2 over 2. So now you can notice something here. There's a plus minus symbol. So as I said, if there's a plus minus symbol, you have to split into plus and minus individually. So how do we do that? So therefore x is equals to negative 12 plus 8 cert 2 over 2, or x equals to negative 12 minus 8 cert 2 over 2. Okay, so let's try to remove the denominator 2. Since we realize that these are multiples of 2, we can simplify it into 2 negative 6 plus 4 cert 2 over 2, and same goes to here, negative 6 minus 4 cert 2 over 2. So therefore you can just cut off the 2, and thus we are going to get our answer of x equals to negative 6 plus 4 cert 2, or x equals to negative 6 minus 4 cert 2. And therefore this is the answer for this quadratic formula question. So now let's look at another example. So now let's look at our second example, 4x squared plus 8x minus 9. So from this we know that a is equals to 4, b equal to 8, and c equal to negative 9. Okay, so let's just substitute inside that equation. So x is equals to negative 8 plus minus 8 square minus 4 times 4 times with negative 9 over 2 times 4. Okay, so negative 8 plus minus, this is going to be 64 plus with 64 plus with 144 over 2 times 4, 8. So negative 8 plus minus 64 plus 144, we are going to get an answer of 208, and we just divide it with 8. Okay, so once we see this plus minus symbol, we can actually split it into individual values. So it's x equals to negative 8 plus 208 over 8, or x equals to negative 8 minus 208 over 8. So if you notice properly, 208 can be simplified into a much simpler number, which is 16 times with 13. So negative 8 plus 16 times 13 over 8, or here negative 8 minus 16 13 over 8. So cert of 16 you're going to get 4 cert 13 over 8. So now let's just simplify this equation. So we can remove the 4 here. So it's going to be 4 negative 2 plus 13 over 8, 4 negative 2 minus 13 over 8, which is going to bring to a final answer of, I'll resume it over here. So it's going to give a final answer of x equals to negative 2 plus 13 over 2, or x equals to negative 2 minus 13 over 2. So let's say if you want to simplify it into a much clearer way, so it's going to be negative 1 plus 13 over 2, or negative 1 minus 13 over 2. So therefore this is how you solve quadratic formula, and I would suggest that rather than using completing the square, if you know that the answer is going to be something irrational like this, you could rather just use quadratic formula, which is much easier and much clearer to understand. But very important thing when you encounter quadratic formula questions, number one, you have to make sure you write the correct formula, don't miss the plus and minus symbol, and number two, make sure you do not commit any careless mistakes, because they are really fatal for your exam. And therefore that's all for this video, guys. Like this video, comment if you have any doubts, share this video to your friends, and don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon. That's all for today. Thank you, take care, goodbye.